Welcome to a fine gaming experience, everyone. It's Bricks here with the usual co-host.
Once again, it is Ice. Keep getting that dung beetle. It's trying to tell us something.
Are you telling me this game is crap?
No, it isn't. But you are trying a new weapon today, and I'm curious to see what happens.
And for all of you that thought this was the end of the game, that we were done, Fiona's got a reaction for you. I love the cat's laugh on this one. He is just going all out.
You're getting your extremely nice tuxedo dirty.
It'll still sparkle. But yes, time for new weapon. One of your favorites, and one of the harder weapons in the game to master.
Yeah, I've tried multiple times to master this weapon and just couldn't get it. But they've actually done a bunch of improvements, we'll say changes, in Iceborne, which have made it a little more friendly.
And this is quite a unique weapon. It's really two weapons in one. It's a sword and shield and a giant axe.
Would you like me to give my description of what it does and how it works?
Please do.
So the Charge Blade is a very interesting weapon. As Brick said, it's got two different modes. You can switch between the axe mode and the sword and shield mode. And it actually has a number of features in it that make it extremely versatile. Because it has so much versatility and because it's so strong, it's extremely hard to use. They had to put some sort of balancing factor in there. There are some very advanced techniques you can actually use to give yourself blocking while attacking. There's these things called guard points. When you're swinging your sword, you actually put your shield in front of you. It's not obvious, but those actual guard points give you an almost infinite defense against a lot of enemy attacks, allowing you to keep your pressure up. You have a gauge, which you have to consistently watch, that fills up with files. You have to spend these files to charge up your axe. If you do not spend the files, you start bouncing off the enemy like they had an infinite amount of armor. Very complicated. When you see it in play, you'll understand a lot more, though.
It's an interesting mix of good and bad. I do fumble with it a little bit here, but I do get to show off a lot of the powerful stuff with it. So yes, we're starting to see monsters we've seen before in new areas. They're migrating, they're being more aggressive, and as we'll see, they are a little bit more beefy.
This is actually one of my favorite parts of the game, and unfortunately, it kind of sneaks up on you, but what we're actually entering right now is called the High Rank. And High Rank has a ton of monsters that you fought before that got new moves, new abilities, do a lot more damage. And honestly, it's really fun. And I actually don't find it that hard. Some monsters are devastating. A lot of the monsters they introduce into High Rank are quite hard. But a lot of the returns to form are just basically the same monsters you fought before. And if you've been doing your farming, you've been upgrading your armor sets, you'll probably have a really easy time. It's almost a satisfying feeling to fight these tougher monsters and work out better. You realize how much you've gained playing through the game.
Look at this trail. Hey, this is a Rathian trail. Wait, what? That can't be right. Something's wrong.
Yes, we found some Rathian prints, but not the usual Rathian prints. There's something strange going on.
What in the new world is it doing here?
This isn't the normal area for a Pukei-pukei. For those who remember, it's an ancient forest monster, and only an ancient forest monster at first.
It's acting weird. What's
Now, I
going
could
on?
jump out here and actually do the quest proper, but you can still continue it on here through the expedition, as long as you kill the creature. I was debating at this point heading off, but Pukei stayed aggressive, so
Watch yourself.
time to start killing.
Now, you notice how the shield ended up in front of him when he made that attack? That's one of the guard points. You'll notice them. There's another one where the shield stayed in front. Now, you can charge up with the files rather than switch to axe mode. You can actually charge up the sword, and you can charge up the shield. And in Iceborne, they actually added the ability to also charge up the axe. You see that little flash on the files, they're glowing red? If he didn't dispel those, he would be missing every single attack by just having it bounce off.
And I put all the files charged up from the sword into the shield. Would you like to explain what that does?
Well, you have better defense now, but it also powers up axe mode so that while you're in axe mode, you get a number of new special attacks. It's a very cyclic weapon. If you remember the insect glaive, the idea of what we did there, this is very similar to that.
This Pukei-pukei is great.
You're going to constantly sort of build files, put them into a part of the weapon, transform the weapon, and continue filling up with files. Now that attack right there, if it hits, is absolutely devastating. I believe pound for speed, it's one of the strongest attacks in the game. I mean, nothing beats a greatsword slash, but you can block with a greatsword, it's just not recommended.
As we saw last time. Now here's a good example of one of the boosts the creatures get. Pukei-pukei did the usual tail fart move he's got, but his tail is still charged up. He can do it again.
And he did.
Indeed. The weak form would usually only be able to do that once, and then it was worn out. We'll also start to see in high rank mode resistances starting to build up, where, for example, if I was to flash this monster, it might last 10 seconds the first time, then 8, then 6, and then 4, and it might stop working after that.
There's your special effect working on there. Now, the files themselves actually do get special benefits. You have different versions of the files can give you extra special attacks, can boost your abilities. Fortunately, you got an overcharged weapon here.
And that's a little bit of me flailing with the weapon, is trying to find the shortcuts to some of the power moves with it.
It is such a fun weapon, but it is hard to use.
And one of the benefits you were talking about there is the elemental effects on the weapon and the files are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So this weapon does paralysis with its regular effects and impact damage with the files. So I am capable of knocking a monster out with this bladed weapon.
Especially in axe mode, where you're actually discharging files, you'll actually see, if we get into some axe mode combat here, there's an additional effect when you hit. You see that little extra special damage that ended up happening? There was a 10 and then there was a 7 there. That 7 is all impact damage. And that's the additional bit of the file being discharged. Oh, so close.
Was really working the tail and cut it off at least.
For those of you who are Sword and Shield fans, I know it looks like a Sword and Shield, but it does not play like it almost at all.
Not at all, really. I find it a very different weapon. Sword and Shield is a little bit more guard and react. This is more, like you said, a cyclical attack motion where you want to be building up with the Sword and Shield and then switching over to your heavy hits.
Mm-hmm. And I know some people who actually enjoy just staying Sword and Shield, and what they do is rather than displace their vials, they actually put the files into their weapons. This attack right here is awesome.
And effective.
300 damage? Was that what that said there?
I believe it was something like that.
Now that slide attack there is excellent. One of the reasons why this is such a great weapon. That little shield pop as well is an excellent way to quickly go into axe mode, and you can spin out of that into your shield charge up. Also, from the shield charge, while your shield is charged up, you can actually go ahead and charge your shield again, and then switch to a sword charge up. So you can have your sword and your shield charged. I think the sword charge up only lasts for about 45 seconds, and the shield lasts for a minute or two.
There is the big attack.
Ah, the damage. Now, it'll only do damage like that if you have the shield charged. Got on the backswing, that's something.
Admittedly, I don't play purely for the big hits here. I know a lot of players with this weapon like just charging up all the files and your shield, doing the huge damage. I'd play it a little bit more swinging around, get some of those moderate hits off. It's a little bit more fast and effective, I find.
And that's a much better way to play the weapon at first. Until you learn the range of the super amped element discharge, you should not be attempting it constantly. It's just, you're not going to get it off and you're going to do less damage. Best way I can describe it is the last weapon we played, the Greatsword. It's very similar to that and the true charge slash that you get with the Greatsword. Don't always go for the true charge slash. You have to wait for the right moment and hit it. Same thing with super amped element on this.
I like sharpening it as the full axe.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Now, this actually is a much more complicated weapon than its brother, which is the Switch Axe. The Switch Axe is just a brutal attacking weapon that has well, I won't get into too much of it, but they look very similar, but they're actually very different. This one's super complex. The Switch Axe is very easy to understand. So if you want a weapon that can become another weapon on the fly, I actually recommend starting with Switch Axe just to get used to that switching back and forth mechanic, and then move to Charge Blade.
I will be doing that one next, so...
It's one of my favorite weapons, and I am absolutely terrible with it.
And the sword and shield variety of moves you have here is pretty extensive. The axe moves, you only really got about 4 or 5, I think, in total from it, but they are your power moves, so it's good to switch between the two when you can.
You saw he did a switch over to his files and switch into axe mode at the same time.
He was paralyzed here, so I tried to do a bit more heavy hits with the axe. It's very quick and easy to switch between your moves, and right there, I wasn't blocking. That was part of the leftover move that did the guarding for me.
Yep, those are called point guards, and you will see them happen randomly while you're playing with this weapon. Most people will be like, I wasn't guarding, what just happened there? And if you notice, he took almost no stamina from that, and he took almost no damage as well. Guard points are excellent, and they work best with your shield charged. But to be honest with this weapon, you should always have your shield charged.
If you're very good with your guard points as well, you're able to follow it up with your big heavy charged axe swing. But it's pretty much a lot of luck to get that off.
I've actually watched some of the better players in the world playing with this weapon. I think this is one of the preferred of a lot of speedrun challenges. A lot of people want to get through and kill things quickly, because it's both defensive and offensive. And much like the lance, while it looks like it's an attack weapon, it's an attack and defense weapon, much as the lance is actually more of an attack weapon than a defense weapon. As long as you can keep bapping things on the head, that's kind of the secret of Monster Hunter. If you can smash it on the head, if you can do damage to it, you're doing the right thing. That's what you should always be doing in combat.
If you've noticed me fighting Pukei-pukei here as well, I've been knocking him over, paralyzing him, being able to just take him out. Fairly effective.
Fortunately, he had a little bit of resistance to the flash there.
Or he was out of range. I'm not 100% certain, but...
It looks like you caught him. Who knows? Every time you run back and you've got your files full, I'm like, oh, please dump those.
Don't need to worry about it now, though, when I capture him.
Nicely done. Now, I will say the Pukei-pukei fight can catch a lot of people by surprise. You're expecting an easier monster, and they don't really mention that, it's going to kick your butt. They just go, there's something wrong with this Pukei-pukei. What's wrong is it's way stronger.
It is quite a jump up from its previous form.
And you notice the plus items.
Exactly. We're starting to get much better goodies here. Even when I was harvesting minerals with the mining there, I got some new ones from that.
And there's another thing on the screen there people are going to notice, the investigation progress. At this point of the game, I will say it's a little irritating, but you have to find tracks for specific monsters in order to enable the hunts with those monsters. And the main game actually won't continue until you get enough of those tracks sometimes. Always pick up tracks. Just make that your life.
And that's kind of what the next part of the game is now. I will be going to a couple different areas, checking out some of these new powerful monsters that are just upgrades from previous ones to track this weird dragon we found the tracks of.
Some with very serious injuries. And I believe the Fifth has more information they'd like to add.
Yes, sir. The other day, we discovered a strange trail in the Wildspire Waste. My opinion is that it belongs to a Rathian, but I'm not 100% sure. The size and other distinctive traits are there, but something is off.
Monster Hunter World, featuring the Handler's Navel.
And our sparkly dress.
You two are a ridiculous pairing, I will say.
I gotta show off the Pukei-pukei, the Poogie outfit that we have. It is a funny little sundress with a hat they put the pig in.
That's amazing.
First, those dangerous monsters need to be taken care of. I'll be sending our best team
Wait,
to each area.
we were going home, man.
Second,
I want to go home.
No, we gotta come out of retirement that we've been in for all of 30 minutes.
Keep your eyes peeled for any clues.
Understood, sir. We won't let you down.
Good, but exercise extreme caution.
I do love the glasses. That last cutscene was amazing with her glasses pushed down.
Mm-hmm. We'll see some of the more interesting outfits she gets for some of the other events as well.
Explaining the tracks here and how they work. And unfortunately, you can only find them on specific quests that are high rank, 6 stars or plus, and they also appear on the expeditions. You'll notice when you go to your expedition screen now, you're going to have an option of low rank or high rank, and yes, it does matter. You're going to want to keep going back to low rank quests to get some specific items, because there are some items that do not drop from high rank versions of those monsters. Certain smaller pieces, especially for a lot of the little creatures.
You might find you're trying to build yourself up to a higher weapon and oops, I'm missing one piece from a low rank monster and have to go back and do it all over again. As you can see, we're going to have to take on a high rank jury toad at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because we brought all these new high-rank goodies in, there is a completely new rank of armor for us as well. High rank.
And the high rank armor is special, isn't it?
Oh, it's very special. Almost every version will have an alpha and beta version. The alpha version is the skill-based one. The beta one will be more jewel-based. And like we just saw, we got an attack jewel. A lot of these jewels will basically mimic other skills. So you can create your own custom sets if you have enough of those jewels, but it's hard to get the right ones sometimes, and the really good ones are hard to find.
You're going to notice they're different. They are very different.
Sometimes it's just a color change, sometimes it's a very different armor set. This is the main reason I've held off on upgrading, though, is the high rank stuff is what you really want to be upgrading your armor. The low rank stuff you're going to eventually shelf.
And I hate to say it, but if you really want to think of Monster Hunter as a long game, which it is, what we just completed was essentially a 20-plus hour tutorial.
More than that, we've done 21 episodes before this, and at least half an hour for each episode, minus the farming between and all the hunts and other item gathering I've done, so...
That's a lot.
Yep.
I still feel like its training wheels come off at this point because there's a lot of new systems they're going to introduce, and we're going to try to make sure that you're not overwhelmed by the new systems. When we get a new system, we'll explain it as best we can. When we get new weapons, I'll explain it as best as possible. I would also say if anybody has any big questions about any of the weapons, specifically the ones we're using now, if you always ask them, Brix will usually regale me with questions that have popped up and things we need to talk about. So feel free if you've got things you need to know. I love this set. I don't know why. It's just, you've got all these other really cool sets, and the chainmail set just kind of feels like, you know what? We're not going to wear our armor from monsters. We want to wear some serious medieval stuff.
And it's a good set, too. It's got some good health defensive ones for you. And like we were talking in a previous episode about the jewels, you might notice here on the beta set, as we go across the different pieces, you'll see slots that'll either have 1, 2, or 3 gem slots in them. Each of these are only 1 slot pieces, but some will have more.
Yeah, a lot of the tougher monsters we end up encountering near the end will offer some pieces that have that. And there's actually upgrades to the jewels. Certain jewels have ranks of their own. So you might have a rank 1 jewel, rank 2 jewel, or rank 3 jewel, and they can only go in a rank 3 or down slot. In other words, you could put a rank 1 jewel into a 3 slot, but you definitely can't put a rank 3 jewel into a rank 1 slot. That is such a ridiculous looking suit of armor.
And what I find interesting is the female version kind of has its own take on it. The male was very coded and hidden. She gets the weird... I don't even know what to describe that hood as. But the skills on this are great for a first set of high-rank armor. Item Prolonger, Poison Resistance, Poison Attack. Like, getting 3 skills on the gloves there is fantastic.
Yeah. You will actually find a lot with armor sets. Gloves are one of the things that contain some of the highest skills and some of the best skills of armor sets, which is great, because if you have a set that you like the look of, but you just want some really powerful skills, nobody really pays attention to your gloves.
She trades in the funky hood for just a overhanging one where she can't see.
That's very Assassin's Creed style. The little bit hanging over right over the nose to cover the eyes.
Like you were saying, the gloves there were one of the better ones. You could put 2 slot 1 jewels into them. Everything else only had a single slot. The Zorah set is amazing. I'm not going to show off all the armor sets here. I would be sitting for about 20 minutes just showing off armor sets. I broke them up into about 5 pieces for the next couple episodes.
I will say the Zorah set has a little bit of a hidden negative on it. If you look down at the defense status, it is a phenomenally good fire defense set, but it is terrible against every other element in the game. Guess you could survive against thunder. It's not going to hurt you too bad. I still wouldn't recommend taking a negative against some monsters.
The crown she gets on that's pretty cool.
This also has a special ability, the Mastery set. So you get critical status on this one, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you put a status ailment on a monster like poison, it's able to do crit ticks on it. Was that it?
I show it off at the end here on the last piece. And basically, when we do critical hits, we do increased abnormal status effects on it. So we'll have a higher chance of doing our poison or blast, yada yada yada, on critical hits.
I wish that worked the way that I originally remembered it working, which is where if you hit poison on somebody, rather than doing 20 per tick, it would do 30 per tick. But there is something that does increase your poison damage. In fact, it's a highly recommended set for those of you who are just learning the game and having a lot of trouble. Great to put poison on enemies, especially with bow users and other ranged weapon users. Poison's excellent if you can't lay a lot of hits into the monster and you're still learning how to play, because you can get tons of DPS by just sticking a status on them. This is one of the new sets, actually, from the, I believe, the festival that's going on.
We recently saw the low rank version. The high rank doesn't look that different, but if you look closely, it's actually got a metallic glimmer to it more so than the last one did. Sometimes the high rank sets will add a very cool rainbow metallic shimmer to everything. Especially with the high rank monsters, some of the appearances might change that way.
You'll notice a lot of these high rank things require ore and bone, which we don't have any of. And that's because, as Brix was saying, a lot of the materials have changed to high rank versions. Meaning right now, we're kind of starting from scratch.
Now, the high rank areas will still contain some of the low rank ores, but basically everything moved up a tier. So what was the rare find on low rank will usually be about the average tier, which means we get a brand new rare one now.
You will have to go back to some of those low rank expeditions if you want to get lots of things like iron ore, for instance, which I highly recommend everybody does. Get those low rank bones and iron ore, because a lot of your starter weapons are going to require those.
Especially if you're trying out a lot of different weapons like I am, or if you just want to try a lot of different elements out.
I love how hardcore that set is, but then with the adorable little bunny ears.
It's not as good as the bone set is for our characters, though, sadly. Now, what's also interesting with the high rank stuff is that it not only applies to stuff like mining points and bone gathering, but also for stuff like gathering up pearls or fungus. Some of the stuff for the canteen will only be available from those rare gathers.
And I think that's something that they're trying to do. They want you to do expeditions to go find tracks, because you should be doing expeditions to also find a lot of these new materials. The game doesn't outright explicitly say, hey, you need stuff, go get stuff, and instead says, hey, you need to go find these tracks. Oh, but of course, while you're there, if you find a mining point, you should probably mine it.
If nothing else, it opened up so many armor sets to you that you're going to want some of them, and it's going to entice you to find that piece of bone or mineral you're missing.
I love the Death Jester look on this one. It is just super cool.
I also love the description on each piece, because it basically says that if you laugh at him, he will kill you for it.
I mean, he's still basically a cat, and we all know cats are cute little murderers.
They gotta specialize in something. Could you picture actually trying to put your cat in an outfit like that?
No. I can't actually picture that. I can't picture putting my dog in an outfit like this. Of course, we know the Aloha set, and I don't believe there's any big changes to that one.
Sadly, the first version for Alpha for the Palico sets is not that different between low and high rank. There will be different versions of it we'll get later on. That is quite unique. I quite like the different star set we'll get later on. But sadly, they're not that different. The stats are actually fairly comparable to the low rank even for this stuff, which is a little disappointing.
Now, the nice thing about these is you don't really need to dive into making your Palico gear right away. I'd actually recommend a lot of just holding off and saving things, because, as you said, there's not really a lot of defensive differences between them. And that's mostly because Palico gear, if I remember correctly, can't be upgraded. You can't pay to, like, upgrade a set like you can with our armor.
No, there will be no different versions, sadly. Added all my beasties here, and we'll check them out next time, but we'll also be exploring all those new areas to find more Rathian tracks. So I hope you join me for that next time, and take care all.